uh, I did not slowly work myself back into having caffeine in my system. Went
Oh.
straight from the 7 a.m. mass to a cheap cup of coffee to an energy drink
Oh
to
no. Oh.
yeah, no, it was a horrible decision. And then went over to my folks' place before heading to our aunt and uncle's for Easter on Easter Sunday, and they knew I'd given up caffeine, and so like they had like when I texted them that I was getting ready to head their way, they started another pot of coffee for me. It's like, all
Nice.
right, and it was great because it was the one of our 3 pound bags that I had bought
Mm-hmm.
when I was staying with them that like I had left there, and so it was like some of our coffee from
Oh
a
wow.
couple months ago, but still like holding up fairly well. And it's like, oh, awesome. But I this is not my first caffeine of my Easter Sunday, and so like downing. Fortunately, it's not like they set the pot of coffee up for me. Like they
Right.
had some too, so it's not me
Right.
just like chugging the 12 cups of
Oh
coffee
man.
or anything. But
So what, you had
yeah,
the
no, it
energy
was not
drink
a
before even getting to your parents?
yeah. I
Oh,
had to stop for
jeez.
gas. I had to stop for gas, man. Oh no, yeah, it was horrific. I
Oh, that's
didn't
so
know that there was going to be a
bad.
pot of. It is. I didn't know there was going to be a pot of coffee for me at my folks' place, and I knew that there were going to be a bunch of little kids running around, and that
Yeah.
I was going to want energy, and that I was going to eat
That's
myself into a food coma. So it was
that's
like it was literally just a series of me doing things designed to shorten my life.
yeah, but with good intentions.
I mean, look, yeah, I appreciate you. I appreciate you giving me the benefit of the doubt. Claiming any kind of intention behind my decision making probably probably more generous than I deserve, but I appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, with that, let's hit an intro and jump into it. Welcome to the podcast, Blue Collar Scholars. Not long ago, a group of brilliant minds met together at a pub to discuss their unfinished works. They recognized the value of coming together around delicious beverages and having meaningful conversations. That group was known as the Inklings. The Inkle Do podcast here, we're working to be the second iteration of that group. So, pour yourself a craft beverage, pull up a chair, and join the conversation. Okay, you have well, you've obviously had some coffee and
Yeah, but nothing. I mean, like ours was it was still good, but it wasn't
Mhm.
fresh.
Yeah.
And we've talked about our coffee.
Yep. And I'm sure they have an old school coffee pot too with like the burner on the bottom, like the
Yep.
glass carafe and the burner on the bottom. And yeah,
Yep.
that
It
makes
hadn't
bad
been it
coffee.
hadn't been sitting on it for long
Yeah.
because it's not that long of a drive for me from where I'm at to their spot. But yeah, it was all right. Like it was
Yeah,
good,
sure, sure.
but
Anything more
no.
interesting?
The more interesting thing, and I mentioned it before, but like I had some more of the Ballast Point Hazy Sculpin,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's just a rock solid beer. I mean, it
Yeah.
is. I don't know. It has a lot more of the kind of citrusy notes.
Hmm.
It I kind of wanted to say like grapefruit flavor, except for the fact that they've got the Sculpin grapefruit, which like that's what grapefruit is, and it was good. But
Yeah.
like it's still it's like that. It's not an orange juice citrus
No.
brightness on it or anything.
It's hard to separate it because a grapefruit is tends to be a bit more bitter
Yeah,
or more on the bitter side. So when you have citrus and bitterness of hops, like you think grapefruit, or I
yeah,
do anyway.
no,
That
a
makes
hundred
sense to
percent.
me.
And yeah, so it is. But it's I do like the fact that it's got kind of those like strong present fruit notes without it being juicy. You know,
Hmm. Hmm.
I every now and then I'll have one that does have like it feels like there's actual like juice was part of the equation for making this beer,
Yeah.
and some of those are nice, but those are going to be things that like I'll have one over the course of a day and be like, oh yeah, that was a
Yeah.
nice refreshing change of pace.
It's like an Arnold Palmer or one of those.
Yes.
Hmm.
Yeah. The John Daly,
Yeah.
which actually, in retrospect, that's probably a. I mean, I know they are actually called that, but considering the guy has had a lifelong battle with alcoholism, calling it that's probably not the The most generous move I could make. Ah, man. Happy Easter. Jesus is risen, and I'm just digging the hole for me to bury myself in.
Oh, that's all right. I'm sure. I'm sure I'll return the favor and put my foot in my mouth by the end of this show for sure.
Counting on you,
It's
brother.
just one of
Counting on
those.
you.
It's one of those things. If there's one thing that's reliable, um, yeah, no,
Oh, two am I certain.
I haven't had much anything new on the beer front. We did find a wine that we really liked, or a wine. I say, well, a wine brand really. So it's called WTF, but it's wine till Friday. And so, like on the label,
Okay.
it's actually designed for a weeknight wine. They're like, this is the wine that you drink on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before you go have something really nice on Friday night. And I was like, I love that you're actually advertising that you're not trying to be the best wine in the market. Like this, you're selling me a weeknight wine.
You're recognizing and claiming your niche.
Yeah, and it's exactly what we want. And Sprouts had it on sale for like $5 off. So I think they came out to like $8 a bottle with $5 off.
Okay.
And boy, they're solid. They're super good. You know, it's kind of like what we are trying to do with our coffee, where it's something that's super accessible, but has a strong flavor note, has a strong finish, has a strong body, like has all of the things there, but at a price that you can play in, you know, like
Right.
it was so good. So like if you see it at Sprouts, it's on sale, man, I would grab one up. Like the red
Nice.
blend, they got the, you know, the cherry with the vanilla and the oak, you know, like all of the like really solid red wine flavors. And like we've just been, I think we've gone through like 4 or 5 bottles just like on this, not like over the weekend, you know,
No,
but
no, no,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like throughout the sale. They've been on sale for, you know, like the month or something like that. And every time we're in there, we're like, okay, stock up on a few more.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah, so
An
it's been,
elevated daily drinker, basically.
yeah, man. Because I mean, we've drank some stinkers because we're cheap, you know. So it was nice to have one that didn't suck for a little while. Like it was good. It's good. So yeah, that's about the most interesting thing for us.
Fair enough, man. Like, that sounds good, though. And again, like, there's also something to the fact that, like, especially, so for me, who doesn't drink a whole lot of wine, that's
Hmm.
exactly what I need, because I need
Hmm.
something that'll allow me to build the palate without me, like, hating my life
Yes.
while I'm doing it.
Yes.
Because, I've got friends who like really good wine, and I can drink it and be like, oh, that's good. And that's
Right.
as far as my analysis
I
can
can't
go.
tell you why, but I
It's like,
like it.
you know what, this
Yeah.
this was nice.
Hmm.
But you probably could have given me something at a quarter of the cost, and you would know that I was drinking something that was cheap and not as good. And I'd be
Yep.
like, this is good. Because I'm still
Yeah.
only tasting like the one or two
Yep.
main kind of headliner notes.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm still in that area. I think that's just kind of where I like to live, to be honest with you. Like I've gotten to that point, like I got bougie in beer, and then like, you know, it's a pendulum swing. Every time you go into
Sure.
something, you're like, oh no, only the best. And then you're like, oh no, I'll try the cheap stuff. You're like, oh no, the cheap stuff is awful. And then there's like this sweet spot of just like where your normal is, and
Yeah.
where you like to live.
Well, and drinking the like super high level stuff, I still enjoy. Like, even with, beer
Sure.
is probably the one that I do that the most with. But it's one of those things, like, it's exhausting to do it every time.
Right. It's like living on vacation. You can't do it. Like
Yeah.
I would be exhausted.
Well, and it is. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, what makes vacation wonderful is the fact that it's the opportunity to do something different.
Hmm.
Like,
Hmm.
if I'm drinking a really good beer, like, I love Belgians, the doubles, the triples, the
Hmm.
quads, love them all. But I'm only going to drink one, maybe, a couple, 3 or 4 times a year. I'll
Right.
bust it out for a special occasion because I know it's really good. And I feel like I have an obligation to, like, notice and appreciate everything that's gone into it. Whereas when I'm drinking something, like the ballast points, it's like, you know what? They've got like three really good things in here.
Mm-hmm.
And there's probably a few others, but they don't care if I notice, and so neither do I. I'm going
Right.
to drink this, notice it's tasty, and move on with my day.
And be happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where it's I've gotten to that point, I think. And I think everybody has to go through it and you have to it's really interesting the way anytime you try something new, you get all crazy about it and then you come
Mm-hmm.
back and then you find the spot in the middle to where you're like, oh well. All right, okay. So even though we are wearing all of the same colors, and I'm going to be making a sports analogy, like we didn't plan on this looking like a team effort here, but like
No.
it works out, I'll
Yeah, I
take
ain't
it.
mad about it, but
I'll take it. But so on my journey to continue trying to understand what stewardship is and how that plays out, because it's something that my brain doesn't process. I mean, it's one of those things that like I get it because I've done it,
sure.
right? So like I used to tell my boss at work that like I was the best number two, right? Like I was the number two that all the managers wanted because I didn't take any glory. Like I don't talk, right? Like I don't chitter chatter. So like the manager can go take all the credit for all of my hard work, and they did every time. But
He
like I
said
don't.
with no bitterness whatsoever.
Yeah, I know. It actually doesn't bother me
Yeah,
at
no,
all.
I
But
know.
like they like that's one of the things that I've always done is like they set these things up and then like I can go knock them down for it, and but then like when it comes to, you know, trying to be a good steward for the kingdom of God, I'm like, I don't know how to do that outside of my own selfishness. Right. And so like separating my selfishness from stewardship has been really, really difficult for me. And so the best I came up with this analogy, when I was watching, I think I was watching ASU lose in the basketball tournament, which, I mean, that's how it goes. Like we usually get in, we usually lose. Name the sport. That's pretty much how it goes. Like
Yeah,
it was nice to
Arizona
get
sports
in.
fandom. This is how things go.
Yeah, this is, we're all familiar with the cycle that we go through. But I was connecting the dots. I was like, I wasn't like sad, like like legitimately upset, but I was like, I was bummed because you're almost like missing out on the energy and the
Yes.
fun and having something to watch for a long period of time and being really engaged in. And so I felt this kind of, I guess we'll call it, let's call it bummed out because I'm not going to call it actual sadness, but
Right.
like, so I was feeling this bummed out. And I was like, I think that might be the best understanding I'm coming to on stewardship is that it's like, I didn't do anything on the basketball court, right? Like I have no claim to it. Like, why am I upset? I didn't get beat. Like I didn't lose. I didn't win. Like I didn't do anything to contribute. Like I didn't even go to a game and cheer, like I wore a t-shirt with maroon and gold on it. And then I'm claiming some sort of association with them. And that's kind of the analogy that I'm coming to is that they're the sports analogy, like the team analogy. Whereas, like there's people that get mad and argue about teams. And you're like, wait a second, like neither one of you have ever played for them. Like you are not part of the team. Like, why are you so angry? But there's this really strong association that their wins are my wins, their losses are my losses, their
Mm-hmm.
good moves are my good moves. And um, I'm starting to think that might be the best or the way that I can figure it out. I'm not sure. So I wanted to run it by you, see your thoughts, see how to figure out how to keep trying to get my hands wrapped around what it means to be a good steward.
Yeah, I think there's something there. And I'm gonna try not to just like full on chase the rabbit trails of the sports analogies because sports analogies and food analogies are kind of the only ones I've got, and so
Yeah, I was like, I'm
that
okay
that
with it. Like,
that means but the problem is that means we have instantly allowed it to become a conversation about literally anything I've ever experienced because those are the two ways I describe everything I've ever experienced. But I think there is something to it. I think fundamentally, one of the hard things is, and this goes back even before you started talking about the analogy, but like the other comparison for like your role as like a lower level manager, like the second in command. People talk about church and faith in corporate terms, and on a certain level, it absolutely makes sense. It is corporate in the sense that we are a corpus, a body. Like we're working together. We're
Right.
it's not a zero sum game unless we're talking about like how it works for the entirety of creation. But the problem with it is, in spite of the truth that's there to it, in America especially, or at least I guess I can't say especially, I really only know American culture.
Yeah.
But
Fair.
like in America, there is this really strong thing where we have a tendency to we're more familiar with capitalism than we are with our own faith, even when we're talking about like our own personal faith journey. And so the terms that we use and the way we talk about things tends to become more like capitalist rather than, faith as like our primary understanding. And so we do things where all of a sudden things are buzzwords. That was a really long path to get here, but I think that's part of the problem with trying to pin down what stewardship means, is that stewardship is it's like any of the office culture catchphrases that has popped up, and you've had 100 different bosses say it, and they all actually mean something different by it when they bring it up. And so it's like, okay, cool, you've used that word, and I know that word, but I don't know what you mean by that word. I know what the last guy meant. And stewardship can kind of have that same thing, where like
I agree with that.
Sometimes when they talk about stewardship, they mean, are you giving money? Which, totally fair. That's a legitimate part of stewardship. Sometimes when they talk about stewardship, they're talking about, the time, talent, and treasure. That whole, like, 3-piece set of basically this idea of evaluating the gifts God has given you. And are you using them selfishly, or are you using them for the kingdom and for others? And again, it's not really like one of them is right or wrong. Like they can all kind of be true, but that's where using the same word for it leads us to problems and confusion.
Yeah. I definitely think that's true, because I have a picture in my mind, like an old school, the steward of Gondor, like the steward, like that, like it's a real thing. And you're right, we have kind of taken the meaning out of the word. I think maybe a little bit, just by kind of capriciously applying it to all kinds of random things.
Well, and it just gets used so often that it's like it's hard for it to still be impactful.
Because it makes sense. I mean, it's the right word to use. It's like love,
Yes.
like it's like one of those things where like, yes, that is the correct thing to talk about. Stewardship in the kingdom of God. That is what we're called to. And so you're going to use it a lot, but it's like, Jesus loves you. Like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because like we've taken away from it.
Well, and again, exactly with that parallel, the idea of, Jesus loves you. The first time you're told that, that's a thing that can like hit your chest like someone swung a sledgehammer at you. But over the course of a lifetime in the church, it's kind of one of those things where every now and then it hits. But it's more of a shotgun than a sniper approach on things, where it's like you hear it so often that every now and then you're just by almost, it's not actually by random chance, but from our perspective, it feels like it. It just so happened that this particular day, everything lined up where I was prepared to hear that statement and let it actually hit me.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's like, no, I know. Jesus loves me. Cool. Awesome. Whatever.
Yep.
And I think the sports analogy for stewardship is really, it can be really helpful from the perspective, almost though, to me, like when you're talking about it, I'm almost like looking at it kind of almost the opposite way. Like when we're talking about the idea of stewardship, instead of us being the fans who are like claiming being a part of something, it's more like that idea of like we're kind of the athletes who have a pseudo responsibility to these people who we're not actually connected with. You know, the whole Charles Barkley, like, I'm not a role model thing.
Mm-hmm.
Chuck, you are.
Yeah.
Like that
Yeah.
maybe you shouldn't be. Fair enough, but you are. Like, and you know, you became famous because of your skill at this goofy game where you chuck a ball through a hoop.
Yeah.
But the responsibility is still real. And in the same way, it's like, you know, I'm not a saint. People shouldn't be looking to me. Oh, but I am. I'm part of the church. I'm part of the team. Am I using these things in a way that's bringing people where they need to go or not? On the flip side of it, though, like, I also definitely see it like us in the stands as well, where it's like, for the most part, anything good that's happening, it's happening because God's doing it.
Yeah.
And like, I don't get to claim credit for God's work.
Well, yeah, no, I like where you're going there. There's something I want to jump back to,
Do
but
it.
I want to comment on this. I'm kind of like swirling here for a minute, but like that's super interesting on being the player versus, because my thing was the association, you know, the like claiming, because like you said, God is the one that's doing it. And so like we want to act in a way that celebrate, like if something good happens for the church, we want to celebrate it. Like we want to be in that disposition to where
Yeah.
like God's wins are our wins, because like what are we going to go win? Like we're not going to go
Yeah.
win anything. You're like participating in something, kind of like like God is the one playing this game and we're cheering and participate. Like we're participating, but it's kind of like a cheerleader is participating in the game more than the, you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
but I also like the idea that there's a level of autonomy. Like you're not in charge, but like you're making decisions, you're doing these things, you're practicing your skills, you're executing your will within the field of play type of a thing. But like then I'm like, okay, well, where's my playbook, man? Like,
Ooh.
why aren't I getting this call that says, you know,
This is the play we're running.
right? Like, oh,
Yeah.
yes, now I know what to do.
We haven't had the practices where we're like, honestly, this thing just happened in my head where, you know, again, Arizona sports fans, we've got one team that's at least still competing.
Yes.
But like, there is kind of there's a basketball analogy that I want to kind of run with and see where it gets me.
Okay, let's do it.
But you know, so like on a basketball team, you've got 5 guys on the court together, right? And I'm going to go ahead and use the Suns as an example. There are 5 guys out there, and there are 3 of them. Trinity, We've got 3 of them with like Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul, who's like, these are the guys who are going to be running the show.
Yep.
Ultimately, when our team succeeds, it is primarily because of those 3.
Right.
However, every now and then I get to be Josh Okogie.
Yeah.
I get to be that guy who, like, I have to like watch what they're doing. I've got to respond to it. I've got to be in position so that when they kick me the ball, I'm prepared to do something with it. I've got my role to play. Like the victory, if the Suns win the championship this year, big if the Suns win the championship this year, Josh Okogie is not going to be the finals MVP.
Right.
Like,
Right.
you know, and so it's kind of one of those things where like we are invited into that participation. God is who we're orbiting around. Like he's the one who is making things happen, but out of his love for us and his desire for us to participate, we do get to in meaningful ways. But we're not the ones calling plays. We don't always even necessarily know what the play is. You know, in that same way that like
Our job
Chris
is to
Paul
watch and
seems
respond.
well, or like that idea of like my job is to figure out like, okay, cool, I'm gonna try and come over here, and if this is where I'm supposed to be, I know Chris Paul knows basketball well enough that if me being here is advantageous, the ball is gonna come flying to me, and so I need to be ready for it. Like it's not necessarily a set play.
Man, I like this. It's frustrating me though, because it's going along a lot of with like, so like some of the things that my my mentor is kind of working on is he's like, dude, you know a lot of things. Now you need to do stuff. Like you're just sitting there thinking and talking and you need to go do. Like, and I was like, well, what am I supposed to go do? He's like, just like relationships. Like his answer is always the same. It's like just talk to people. Like just like interact, like just be you out there. Like just go do something as yourself. And I'm like, it's not that simple. It can't be that simple. And so it's infuriating to me because he just kind of lives out this the way that he lives it out is it's in kind of inspiring, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to be mentored by him by so much is that it's just him being him to everybody that he interacts with all the time. That's all. That's like all it is. And then I'm sitting here going like it can't be just that, right?
Well,
Like,
and you're partially right. Like, it's not just that, but it is that. Like, the thing is, you've chosen to go to him as a mentor because this is a thing he's been doing for a long time, right? Like he's been doing it this way, which means he's had the experiences of going out and doing something and it being not the thing.
right.
It was just a thing, and now he knows. And then he's found these other things where it's like, you know what? I know what it feels like when I'm where I'm supposed to be, and it's this right now at least. And it'll be something else later, but I know that this is where I'm supposed to be. And so like we started off talking about ASU, we jumped up to the NBA, but let's be honest, we've both coached junior high basketball teams, and that's more the level we're at.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
like that's what it is it's like, you know, when you the hard part of the exciting thing about coaching junior high kids in a sport is that they know nothing. And so like every single day they are learning a thing. And the chances of seeing dramatic growth in a short season are pretty significant because, well, when you're starting off as a seed, each individual leaf coming up on the plant is really exciting. But that's kind of, to a certain extent, where we're at. Is like, it looks like it's just that for him because we haven't seen the soil get tilled. You haven't seen the seed planted. You haven't seen the water and the sun and the storms that it's gone through to get to this point. You're seeing the tree. And it's like, yeah, no, so you're right. It's not just that. There's a bunch of stuff that's going to go along with it that we have to continue figuring out. But we can't figure any of it out by standing still.
By not doing it. That's what I was gonna say. Like, I feel like there's a call to stewardship. Like there's something that's like, and this is what like the friction inside of me is that there's an action oriented disposition there, but I can't find it. You know, like a calling. Like it's like if you're gonna go, you can't just be like, I'm a steward now. You know,
No.
like
Yeah.
you have to do something that is, you know, stewardly, you know, like, and so
Well,
there is some action there, and that's where I kind of want to jump back to
do it.
your comment on capitalism, and I think you might have hit something there in that, you know, the idea that we know capitalism more than our faith or more than anything else. I was like, gosh dang it, I think that's so true. Like capitalism is super ingrained in us. And capitalism, I don't believe to be an evil, but it's our presupposition. It's where it's our mode of you know, like we're gonna go there first because
It's so deeply ingrained in the way that we look at things that it's the lens that we don't realize we're looking through.
right. And that lens is to how do I get something out of this? And so, you know, you hear a call to go steward something for God, and you're initial response is, how do I get something out of this? There's like an incongruence that's just like, like pulls it to a halt instantly because it doesn't, they don't connect.
No, like stewardship and capitalism are, I wouldn't say that they're necessarily opposed, but they're not connected. They're not necessarily opposed to each other, but like they might be parallel to one another, where they never actually intersect. Because the whole concept of stewardship, going back to the Steward of Gondor, which is literally the only thing that happens in my head anytime I hear the word steward, but the whole concept of it is that it's not ours. It doesn't belong to us. It's been entrusted to us. And so we've got to be able to kind of make that recognition of what are the things that I have, and then what are those things for? Not what can I get out of them, but what are they for? What are these things pointed to? Why do I have them? What is their purpose? And how do I use them for that purpose without consideration of what comes back to me?
How do I use them for that purpose? That I think is the kicker. Like that's the question, right? It's not what can I get out of it. It's what do I have? What is its purpose? And how do I use it for that purpose? That is a series of questions that I do not ask myself at all. Like it's instantly, how can I get something out of this thing that I have?
Yeah, and again, it's not even necessarily at its heart a like negatively selfish concept, but it's this idea of, oh, so if I'm using them correctly, there should be some result, something that happens out of it. And to a certain extent, that's true, except for the fact that Jesus tells us, to some it's given to plant, to others harvest.
Right.
And so just because there will be results, but I don't have any guarantee that I get to see them firsthand.
Right.
And so it comes back to that idea of trust, and stewardship is a process-based thing that we can't really evaluate in terms of results this side of heaven.
And to connect that too, because my thought on the stewards is always on the tenants, right? Because they were given something and they multiplied it.
Mm-hmm.
And we always focus on the multiplication, but we don't realize that the real source of it is the effort to invest it. You know, like to do something. Like he gave you the money. Why didn't you go at the bare minimum? Go do it. It's the effort, not necessarily the result. And so like God's not asking you to multiply it 10 times. He's just asking you to invest, to do the work. Investing is the best word that I can think of because of the analogies, but like you're right, like your job is to invest. You might not reap it. It might go to someone, like it might go, you're part of a body, not an individual, like, oh, okay. Lots of dots to connect there for me. So if you were going to wrap it up into a life lesson, what would you pull from it?
Well, I think this, for me, all of this stuff kind of comes back to that, like, initial awareness of what have I been entrusted. Before I can ask the question of what I'm supposed to be doing, I have to have some kind of it'll probably be incomplete, but I've got to have some kind of a tally in my head of, you know what, these are the things I have been given. Yeah. These are the things that I'm responsible for. And it's only when I know what those things are that I can start thinking about, okay, cool. If this is what I have, why do I have them? What is the purpose for it? What do I need to be investing it in?
Right.
And again, going back to that parable of the talents, like, again, the guy didn't get in trouble. It wasn't about the talents coming back. He got the talents back from the one who buried him.
Right.
The parable kind of reads as if, you know what, it would have been better if you had invested in something and it came up busted. Like, at least then you did something with it.
Right.
And so, like, to me, that's where it comes down to is, like, what are the gifts? Recognizing them as gifts, recognizing that I have them. That way I can start looking for, where can I use them? Where can these be invested?
Yep. And humility is not denying that you have gifts.
Yes.
right?
The
Like you,
C.S. Lewis line: humility is not thinking less of yourself; it's thinking of yourself less.
yeah. So
I
like,
don't particularly factor into the equation, other than the fact that there are things in my hands that should be leaving my hands to do something.
yeah, yeah. I like it. And I was gonna go. Awareness was exactly the thing that was going for me too, but it was more along the lines of that incongruence between the capitalism mindset and the stewardship mindset. Like we have these, you know, ingrained operating systems and assumptions that don't necessarily connect. Like we love to believe that America is a Christian nation, but like it's not, right? It's the world.
Yeah, there's some Christianity in there,
Yeah,
but
but it's you can't build your faith on the systems that America is. Like that's
right.
not it's not the same. And so you know, not realizing that I had those assumptions that I was those operating assumptions is one of the reasons why I think I've been struggling so hard to understand a selfless calling because I was using a selfish tool to process it or looking through a selfish lens and so like it just wasn't connecting at all. And so really getting those operating assumptions out and aired out and the only way to do it is to talk through them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you don't engage in these things and interact and hear these different thoughts, like those assumptions aren't going to come out. You're just going to hear them and reinforce them over and over again. So, like I was on a sports analogy and you brought in a capitalism, you know, comparison. Like that's how it works, you know.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, speaking of capitalism, we would love to sell you some coffee. But
Yeah.
it is what it is, you know. But
Yeah. Again, not opposed to one another.
not opposed. Not
Just because
opposed.
I'm saying capitalism is not the way to understand faith does not mean I'm saying capitalism evil. Just,
It is what it is.
got to be
But
in
that
its
is
proper place.
that exactly right, and that place is to support meaningful conversations, and that's how we do that. So, hop on that website, order a couple bags of coffee. I'd love to roast it fresh, ship it to you. You got anything else on your brain there, man?
Nah, man, I'm good. Happy Easter, everybody.
Yes, happy Easter. All right, with that, we will say.
Adieu.